Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Ask the Jegna with Brandon Jones. And on today's broadcast, we're going to answer a question that may scare some, but have others intrigued. Does Brandon hate white people? And I share this question, and I'm going to speak on this tonight to not talk about myself as other thought leaders do. I will talk about myself. I will answer that question, but also when it comes to, frankly, black and white dynamics, how do we continue to move forward, especially as we are now into 2021? What does that mean? Oftentimes we talk about racism, whether that's anti-racism, we're talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion. You often hear people say, I can't believe this is happening. This is year, 2000 and blah, XX, right? And here we are in 2021 with a lot of the same issues that we've had over time. But I think now people are at a place to actually listen and to actually do stuff about the injustices that we have. So this is a question that came to me via a listener of Ask the Jegna, or just follower of my content. So that's the question that I'll be discussing today. Is does Brandon hate white people? Okay. So a few things before we get started. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. Matter of fact, should have my banner showing. Let's see. Getting my StreamYard game up to par. It's getting a little bit better. But yeah, if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, go to Brandon Jones and you can type in Jegna. That's Jegna. Jegna, not Jenga like the board game, but Jegna. If you type that in, you will be able to find me on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe on YouTube. I know that the following on Facebook has been really good. So continue to share, comment, and like the show on Facebook. But you can follow this show on both platforms, and this broadcast on both platforms. What's up, Brian? I see you in the comments. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Absolutely happy New Year. Habar. We have made it to this new era, this new time frame. For a lot of people, they felt like they've left 2020 behind them with expectations for 2020 or 2021 to be better. So hopefully everybody who has that mindset are taking action steps to make sure that the 2021 is better than 2020. And unfortunately, many people who have created New Year's resolutions have already fallen behind on those things, and we're only in the fourth day of the new year. So be sure that you are taking the action steps necessary to keep moving forward and building and making your life a better situation in place for you and the people that you're responsible for, the people that look up to you. What's up, Braden? Good to see you as well. Thanks for stopping by and joining the broadcast. So, oftentimes I do a lot of work in the diversity, race, equity, inclusion space. I'm not going to lie about that. I live in Minnesota for the folks that don't know. What's up, VC? I am in Minnesota. I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I'm a third generation Minnesota. My children are fourth generation Minnesotans, which is very rare for black people. Most black folks who are in this state are usually first or second generation black folks, because most black people who come here by way of seeking economic opportunity, whether that's for a job or they went to school here and then got a job after they graduated from school, usually college, or their families came here because there is a notion that Minnesota is a state that has a lot of assistance to help people get on their feet, which is very true. So it's very rare to have black folks who have these like long lineages here in the Twin Cities, but I am one of those folks. So being a black person in Minnesota, I've been surrounded around white folks all my life. What's up, Greg? Hotep. And that's just what it is. No matter if you live in a black part of town or not, you're going to be surrounded by white folks just by pure demographics, by numbers. And we interface with white folks all the time. So when this person asked me this question, I told them that I would just respond to them on the next show, because to me, I've gotten to a place where I'm not here to hate anybody, really. I don't hate white people. Of all the atrocious things that white folks have done, the crazy things that white folks have done, I don't have any hatred for white people at all. I don't allow white people to have that much of an emotional response or emotional stronghold on me to even hate them. I have grown. Now, I will be honest with you. There was a period of time when I was going through my own, what I call awakening period, when I was getting more pro-black, which was really just a self-discovery where I did. And this was like not early 2000s. I would say probably 2010-ish. It was probably like a good maybe like 4-year run. I'll say like 2010 to 2014. I was going through a identity crisis, really trying to figure out what's going on. And then we had events like Trayvon Martin that took place during that time that didn't help that. And I was already entrenched in a lot of pro-black content, information, and really just trying to figure out who I was. So it became very easy to hate because it was a much more of an emotional response because I was going through an emotional transition. So yes, but something happened over time as I developed more logical thinking, as I started to kind of build on this understanding of dismantling racism. And honestly, when I started doing what's called anti-racism work, which was a very new concept then, but has become more of a concept today. Hey, what's up, Talea? Welcome to the broadcast. I started to really think about white culture. And when I started thinking about it logically, and I started running into people like Dr. Edwin Nichols, I was already familiar with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Dr. Clark, Amos Wilson. I was already familiar with those folks. But when I was able to start looking at it from a cultural standpoint, I started to get more logical, and it made a lot more sense. It made a lot more sense to me of who and how these folks are. And then I started to look at the folks that I idolize and the intellectuals that I like to pattern myself behind. And they never had any hatred. Even Dr. Khalid Muhammad, which most people never talk about or even give him his respect, but he didn't have hatred. He knew what the deal was. He was just very frank and very strong and masculine in his frame. And having that masculine frame as a black man and as a dark-skinned black man at that made him very dangerous, not just to white folks, but to black folks as well, which is part of the reason that led him out of the Nation of Islam. And I took note of that. I took note of not having an emotional response to something that you're trying to solve, a problem or something you're trying to understand. Now, you're going to have emotional reactions, but what you do with those reactions are very important. It's the same thing that I do when it comes to parenting. Like, I have emotional responses to my children all the time, but how I respond to those emotional responses is key because that's what they're going to understand. They're not going to understand daddy's frustrated because we just made a mess all over the living room. They're going to understand, is daddy going to cuss me out? Is daddy yelling at me? Is daddy about to hit me? Is daddy telling me, hey, I can't do this, and showing me how to clean it up and not to do it again? I have to have a different approach. And I learned to take that same approach when it comes to dealing with racism and white supremacy, is that in this world, in this society, in this state that I live in, there's no escape. So by me hating something that I can't get around, there's no point. And if I go around hating something and allowing it to have that much emotional pull on me, I'm never going to get into the position I need to be in for myself, for my family, and for my community. So the short answer to the question is no, Brandon does not hate white people, but Brandon is understanding the system in which white people function in. And another kind of revelation that I had is I don't think that white people completely understand how they benefit from the power dynamic of whiteness and racism, white supremacy. And I think what academia has done recently is pushing them to understand it, but it's still kind of coddling. Hey, Shantea, what's up? Wolfman, what's going on? And Zarek, hey, greetings, welcome. Yeah, so at what academia has done, which is a positive and negative. There's duality in everything. So in positive and negative, the positive and negative to what academia has done is it's put some things that were taboo to say out in the lexicon of day-to-day people. Like saying white supremacy was like a taboo thing to do. And I was back having those conversations on Blog Talk Radio and all that stuff where we couldn't even put it in the titles. And now it's on national news, it's in classrooms, it's on your social media feed, all that good stuff. But at the same time, now now that it's commonplace, there's still this level of confusion on what that stuff really is. And I think as non-white people, we have to be able to understand what white culture is, because at this stage in the game, we can't get away from white folks. So if you're gonna hate something that you can't get away from, what's the point of doing it? Oh, that's interesting. I've never seen that before. I have someone who says Facebook user, doesn't have their name on here. Says Hotep, brother Brandon. Hotep to you too, Facebook user, whoever you might be one of them bots. I'm gonna have to get you up out of there. But we have to be honest and real about this. I don't remember if I said this on the last broadcast I did or not, if I was talking to someone. I've been having a lot of conversations recently, but we're talking about Pan-Africanism and black folks going back to the continent. And I said, one of the things with that is there's cultures already on the continent. It's not just one culture. So you can't just assume you're going to just go there and be okay. You have to immerse yourself in the culture, and you can't assume that you're going to get away from racism. You're just going to get a different variation or version of what racism is, which on the continent, most places is called colonization. That's very different than what we have here in the United States. So for me, I always like to take that portion and think about it and just say, what does this society look like and what's happening on their side? So for me to sit there and hate and allow white people to have that much emotional pull on me doesn't do me any good. All right, I'm gonna answer that question, VC. So VC, what's up, Chaos? Chaos, hit me with those dates, man, so we can do your show. VC says, whites have not been through half of what we've been through. Why are they so fragile? Let's get into that. I don't believe in the fragility thing. I think Robin DiAngelo, I think she's a very intelligent. I've seen her in person. I've never worked with her. I've seen her in person a few times. She's worked closely with some folks that I know personally. I feel like Robin DiAngelo's work is important, but I feel like Robin DiAngelo's work plays on this notion of white people being fragile, white people being guilty, white people being the victim. And I think that that's very dangerous for non-white people to fall into that trap, to understand that in this system creates victims of many, but this system does not create a victim of white people in powerful positions. Now, white people treat white people poorly all across the world. We can't evade that, but we have to understand the history of how white people became white. We have to understand how white people play the social power dynamics. So I don't buy into the fragility thing. I think that that's just a comfortable way for white people to really to even have these conversations. And I've said this several times publicly, that I don't think having conversations about racism is really a tough thing. To me, I don't feel like it has to be as problematic and tough as we make it. And I feel like when people say that, have these courageous conversations, I feel like when they're saying that, they're creating an environment that provides kind of like some padding to not have the conversations. And it builds this like false self-esteem that what you're doing is actually making a change. But we know that you cannot change racism by talking. Now, you can change people's mindsets by providing alternative information, but people have to be in a space or cultivated to be in a space to actually accept alternative information, even think differently, which most people are not, which is one of the things that also helped me kind of move from this space of feeling like I needed to hate white people or not. Because once you get an understanding of what's happening, it's not about your emotional response to it. It's about what are we going to do to change the outcome of the situation. And most people aren't ready to have that conversation, because a lot of times those changes have to do with you giving up something, which most people don't want to give up. That's why it's so hard for people to change things, because they don't want to give up what they already know. They don't want to get outside of their comfort zone. And even if your comfort zone is dysfunctional, people will more likely stay in that comfort zone because it's predictable. It's what they know, even if it's causing harm to them. So we have to be very mindful of that. That's one of the reasons why I don't buy the fragility thing. Because why are you so fragile? I mean, VC, you said a very good point. You haven't been through half of what we've been through, but you so hurt. But you doing all the pain. You laying out the blows, not us. And that's something that we have to keep in mind and be honest about. We can't. I don't buy into that. And it's funny because I'm in these conversations all the time. People actually appreciate my approach because I just give it to you straight. And I get that from Mr. Fuller and Dr. Francis Cress Wells. And then you just take it or you leave it. And if you want me to bring facts to back up what I'm saying, I got them facts to back up what I'm saying as well. Because I understand, I've been in academia, I've been in these places, in these institutions where they respect documentation, they respect references, they respect who are notable, and I'll give it to you, but I'm also going to give you an alternative way to think about it. And I try to do the same thing for folks in our community, but break it down in a way that they can understand it. What's up, CC? Yes, absolutely, Chaos. The comfort zone does equal stagnation. You don't go nowhere when you're in that comfort zone. It's the same thing with personal development. Right now, this past weekend, with 2021 starting, there were tons of people creating vision boards, getting planners, setting goals for the year. But they're in their comfort zones. They're not ready to get uncomfortable. So guess what? Those New Year's resolutions are going to fall short in about 2 weeks if they haven't already fallen short, because most people are stuck in their comfort zone. It's the same thing when you talk about race relations. When you talk about racism and white supremacy. That comfort zone's cool. But one thing you're starting to see is that there's been a push, mainly from academia, on white folks to get outside of their comfort zone, but they're putting them in another comfort zone. So you need to understand that this is what academia is doing. They're putting out information, getting people to get into this space of thinking. And they're saying, look, as a white person, you need to understand you've caused harm. The things that you've done are bad. You need to be more equitable. And really, it's more geared towards white men, to be completely honest. And I have an example that I should pull up and show you all, because it's just funny how this thing worked out about the Grammys. Before I lose my train of thought, let me pull that up, because I thought that this was just fascinating. I'll pull it up here in a second. But that's what academia has done. It said, look, white folks, really white males, white men, you are at the social hierarchy you're on top of the whole social hierarchy. You're bad, you're racist, you're a bigot, you're harmful, you're hurtful. And it's just laid out this foundation for white folks, right? And what has happened with that is it says, okay, now you need to work on being anti-racist. And this is what an anti-racist ally looks like. And it's still another space of comfort for white people to feel good about themselves. And then, to be completely honest, and I would love some feedback from people on this, one thing that I've really seen, and I want to dig into this a little bit more, is I've seen I just got a text message that Kevin Samuels is getting sued. Why do people send me this stuff while I'm doing a show? I'm doing a show. I don't want to talk about Kevin Samuels getting sued. That ain't none of my business. I ain't suing him. Anyway, so that might be a news break for some of y'all. Kevin Samuels is being sued. So one of the things that I've seen with white folks in this anti-racism space is that a lot of white folks, they get into a space of almost like being how do I say this? I don't want to lose people with this, but it reminds me of a BDSM sexual relationship where they just like to be beat on and told how awful they are, and they just like to be just like dominated from a racial standpoint. It's a very bizarre, twisted behavior. And I see these people who they'll come to validate their white, they'll come to me, like I'll do a training, and after training, usually I don't get a lot of questions because it's just straight, shot, no chaser. And then chaos. Kevin Samuels has nothing to do with it. It's an inside joke for folks who watch Ask the Jegna, because Kevin Samuels comes up a lot when we talk about relationships because he went viral. That's all. And I just got a text message that said Kevin Samuels is getting sued. That's all it has to do with this stream. All right. So for the folks that know, they know. For the folks that don't know, that was just a random pin just to put it right there. So what I've seen, and when I do these trainings, right, is I'll have white folks who come afterwards, and they'll send me an email later, and they'll say things like, I've really been bad. I'm really working on, dismantling my whiteness. And these are all the awful things that I did. And then they'll ask a really bizarre question like, am I a bad person? And it's just like, why do you want me to tell you that? Like, what does that do for you to validate how bad you are with your whiteness? You need to figure out your own stuff and do your own healing and break down the system to the best of your ability. So I have personal issues with the concept of allyship, because I really don't like the way that that's being directed, because it's really putting people in this box of being victims. So you go for white people being oppressors to white people being victims when they are part of the system that creates the inequality that's there. It's a really bizarre situation that ends up happening. These are not abolitionist white folks. Like, these are white folks who are almost putting themselves in a position to get attention versus other things. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And I don't know if other people have seen that. Yeah, it's like it turns them. So I didn't want to get too involved in the sexual stuff, but it is like it's arousal that white people get when they have a non-white person telling them how bad they've been as a white person. And I think that that's weird. And I'm not here to be your dom. I'm not here to come and arouse you by telling you how awful you are as a white person. I need you to get your stuff together and stop trying to lean on me to validate some sick cognitive thing that you got going on, because that is just weird to me. And I've seen this happen multiple times. It's not like an isolated incident, but it's something that we have to think about and pay attention to as people who are in these spaces and having these conversations. Because if you haven't been in these, and it's usually people who work in social services, if you haven't been in these social services or even educational institutions, they're starting to come into your workplaces next. Whether you work in a warehouse setting or corporate America or even in government, there's going to be more conversations on anti-racism, and you have to be mindful of what's going on. Most of our people are blinded by the picture they framed for us to look at. So how do we do the action needed to break the frame and free our African minds to find and see the truth within? And that was a comment here by Facebook user, whoever that may be. So again, the question was, and feel free if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments area and I'll read them off and answer them if you have them. I might drop a link if people want to hop on and chat too. So the question was, most of our people are blinded by the picture they framed for us to look at. So how do we do the action needed to break the frame and free our African minds to find and see the truth within? So to answer this question, I think there's several things that we have to do. It's not going to be a silver bullet. It's not going to be a one size fits all thing. But first, we have to understand that we have to break our addiction to white. What do I mean by that? I did a broadcast on this last week. But we have to learn that white does not have to be our standard. That's part of that frame that has been given to us, is white has to be our standard. We can just be who we are as Black people or Africans, as you've mentioned here. But we have to be able to break that frame first, because too many of us. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. I don't know why it's coming up like that either, but I got you now. So many of us are in this position because what ends up happening is we assume that we need to be like white folks. I don't believe that to be true. And I think that that's one of the first steps that we can take in order for us to move forward in our healing journey and our healing process, is erase that from being our standard. Our standard is who we are as humans. And if we want to use from an African or Pan-African perspective, then we need to, or even Mayat, that's a good place to start. But we have to also understand that even Mayat has to be looked at in a current context. We can't assume that life is going to be like it was back in ancient Egypt or other places on the continent. We have to understand that we need to utilize those principles and that comedic wisdom and knowledge in today's time. That's what's going to help us move forward. We do need to learn about the true history of slavery. It was brutal. But also we need to learn about the true history of our families. Because believe it or not, knowing the true history of your family, if you were born here in the United States and you have slavery in your lineage, we'll get back to that story. But it's an empty history if you don't know how it connects to you personally. It's one of the big things that I often say. I can teach Black children about Black history all day, but if they don't know nothing about where their family comes from or why they're even significant in this world based on their own family history, we're not teaching the full picture. We're not giving them enough. So yeah, learning the true history about slavery is good. It's very brutal, and it highlights some things that we don't want to talk about or be honest about, even on our end, like Black people owning slaves and stuff like that, which happened. We never talk about free Blacks and how they treated folks. We do talk about the Black bourgeoisie, but we don't go back to that time frame of during slavery, because they were around during that time too. We don't get too deep into that, but if we want to talk about that, we can. But I also think we need to talk about children's experience or their family experiences, because the young people that I know, They don't know a lot about their family history. They don't even have exposure to many different things. So back to the original question, how do we free ourselves? So yeah, teaching about history is important, but we also need to know our personal histories if we can. I think we also need to have what I call apprenticeships. And this is more geared towards people 30 and under, 25 and under. Young people need to know how to do things and use the tools that they have to take care of themselves and be self-sufficient. That is very important. We need to be more involved in the educational process of our children, right? That means utilize the institutions that are there. It's cool to have our own and can control our own, but if something's already halfway built and not functioning well, that's an opportunity for us to step in and overtake it. So the public education school system, the school system is not the most beneficial for most of our children. But we have smart people in the community that can supplement that or get into that to change the direction for our children. So learning history is a piece of that, but we also need children that are literate, that can actually read. We need children that can write, that can actually do math. We need children who understand critical thinking and concepts. A lot of adults don't have those, and that's why a lot of adults end up in bad situations or being taken over. So it's important for us to actually be more proactive in where we're at today. Use those historical things that we know that worked and see how they function in a today's society. A lot of times we like to do Sankofa and go back, but we never do the other part of bringing what we learned back then forward. So going back to move forward, there's another piece of that story that doesn't get told. We just get stuck in glamorizing Black history, and we don't ever bring it to today's society and say, okay, this is how we do it today, which is what we have to do to keep moving forward. And we also have to believe that we are creating history now. What's up, DeRay? For those of us who struggle to find our personal histories, do you have any suggestions on things and best ways to find that information? Yes. If you can, talk to people in your family. I went and visited my grandmother today, and we were just talking about family stuff. It was a good time. Shout out to Mama Ruthie. She's probably watching, because I watch your show. Talk to people, elders in your family. Now, many of us, we're only going to get pieces of our family stories. But once you get those pieces, you also can go to historical societies that are in most big cities and big states that might be able to link you to other pieces of your family history. I think that's important. So like for me, I can find family history on my mom's side all day. On my dad's side, I don't know a damn thing. It's just like, it's nothing. It's not a lot there for me. Now I can go ask some questions to my dad, to his family members, but it's only going to go so far. But even what you do find out, I think is beneficial for your healing and for your growth. Many of us don't do that. We'll go find historical figures that make us feel good, but that's good. We should utilize those folks as idols and folks that give us some vision, but also we need to know pieces of ourselves as well. But the apprenticeship piece is very important. Let's see. I'm not gonna put that on the screen, but yeah, I got you. I'm there too. Cleo Monago, Black people owning slaves. You can't drop that bomb without telling the whole story, giving some context. Most Black people who brought slaves did so to free them. And generally, Black people did not hang and dehumanize enslaved Black people. This is true. Generally, there was a huge difference between Blacks owning enslaved Africans and white people doing it. Absolutely. But also, Cleo, to add to your point, is that, yes, there was a difference because there's a different cultural paradigm, but that doesn't mean that they didn't still own those people. Now, there were Black folks that bought Black folks and freed them, but there were also Black folks. I mean, if I gotta do some digging, let me do some digging. There's these two famous, well-known. Now these folks were Black, but I think they were Creole women in Louisiana. What were those sisters' names? Who owned slaves? Sisters owning slaves in Louisiana. Another thing to bring up while I'm doing some research here, so I gotta fact check. See how they come. See how you do me, Cleo? I thought we was cool, man. You gotta come making me do some research live on air. But I'll dig into this narrative here. But yeah, there were Black folks who did purchase and enslave Africans. There were also Spanish people who did the same thing. Mexicans, if we want to use that terminology at the time, who actually owned slaves. This was a business at the time. and it was a very different approach. Yes, being Creole is significant. Yes, and that's why I mentioned it. So, because they have a different cultural paradigm as well, with more of that French influence, they're looking at enslaved Africans a little differently than the Anglos did at the time. So, and that's why slavery here in the United States was very different than slavery in other places around the world, because of the cultural frame or the axiology of the people who own the slaves. Yes. So, but to continue to go down this road and to talk about this, a lot of another thing we have to keep in mind about this, because you mentioned Black people did not hang or dehumanize enslaved Blacks, which is true. Now, a lot of enslaved Africans during slavery were not hung. This is why we see them being brutalized. Greetings, Shar, welcome. This is why you see a lot of Black folks being brutalized, like getting limbs cut off and things like that, because they had a value. Black folk, enslaved Africans had a value. So you would damage, quote unquote, the property, but you wouldn't necessarily kill it off unless it was absolutely necessary. Right. So you seen the dehumanizing happening all the time. This was a consistent thing. But the hanging part or the lynching part didn't really happen until after slavery was, quote unquote, ended. That's when you seen lynchings just take off to a whole nother level, because the value shifted and now became, oh, these folks are not slaves anymore, so let me go after them. Before there was it, and this is twisted, but before, during slavery, the value of an African, an enslaved African, or what was being created into a Negro, was a lot higher than once slavery was ended. And then that's when you see lynchings actually start to take a rise, because it was a different value system. Twisted psychology, as I've stated before, if I ever go get my PhD, that's what I want to study, is what happened to the psychology of white folks between that time period and now, because to me, something ain't right. Something's missing. And that's where you see a lot of this bizarre behavior, as I was mentioning earlier. Now, let me see. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Maybe I should try to drop the link. I don't know how to drop a link on here. Let me see. How do I do this? Just in case anybody wants to hop on. That's right. It's on YouTube. So I dropped the link on YouTube if anybody wants to join and share anything. I have no idea how to drop the link on Facebook. Let's see. How do you do this? Oh man, I ain't got time to read this live. That's on Messenger. I'll drop the link on YouTube, on Facebook here, from Facebook here in a minute, just in case people have questions or want to join. There we go. All right, so I'm bringing you all on one-on-one though. So we're not gonna do a panel. I'm gonna bring you on one at a time. So welcome, Chaos. How you doing?
You're using a nice system. This is
what's up, man?
It's clear. You're not the first one to say this is clear. I don't know what's up. Yo, you've been preparing this before the end of 2020.
Yeah.
You side dog. You said, man.
I told you I gotta get my content game up, man.
Well, the one thing I will say is, since you're still fresh to this, since the first live stream on, I think days ago. If you are using the StreamYards, which you are, there's something called a pin. You can pin things now on top of your chat
comments.
Oh, yes. Okay. If you click on it, there's it'll tell you three dots.
Oh, I got you.
So now when it's up there, so people want to say you want to join in, there's the link.
Here's the link.
Gotcha. But like I said, because you're still very small, very tiny channel, it's going to take a while. The challenge is with information like this, Brendan, is that people are not going to be so receptive to the information that we already are aware of for decades now. And it's a surfacing now because the climate of this country and outside America globally is a little different monster in itself, especially when it comes to Black folks and non-Black people. We all know European people, regardless how their position in society and the world right now is very much slim, is questionable. So one thing that keeps them on top is what we call propaganda and mental manipulation, or what they call
absolutely
thinking.
Yep.
As you know, I'm not too a big advocate of what direction our people are going now, especially with social media and this media apparatus that we waste time. Actually, we fondle this media apparatus as we speak because we're not sure how long this YouTube is going to keep a lot of us Black folks around
to have these conversations, right?
Black folks around. Either the conversations are need to have, or even things that are just more to keep us separate. I look at that the opportunity that we could have taken this much better to change the dynamics, especially the face of, I guess, Black male inferiority, is winding down as we speak. You get me? That's why I see a lot of men overall. They're trying some things. Even the thing where you mentioned Mr. Samuels earlier about why they're putting it out, because he has started a conversation that shows from the other side that they don't want to not even have, but it's a big problem. And I'm saying, yeah, the men, they kind of use this a little bit fruitless, but nonetheless, there has to be some pushback to the propaganda right now on Black men. I didn't think it was that important, but now watch and pay attention for the last couple months. Now I have to really think critically, say, yeah, this is a necessity now. Because there's no know that we are comfortable of keeping the males, the leaders of this community, the Black males, in a very inferior position.
Right.
I mean, you gotta make up your mind. Do you want Black male leadership either in your own household or out there in front, or you just want to continue the status quo going?
Right.
The choice is yours, men and ladies, especially ladies. And like I said, we deal with yourself, because I'm not sure how far you can go into psychology, but you know, I look at this. We gotta look at us as a collective as whole. We gotta stop dealing with, because I'm doing no better. No, that's like a survive us. You get me? There are certain things we could do right now. Either men could do, not much, or women could do to start turn this around slowly. You get me?
Yep.
Because the children that's coming up, because we are past our time now. If we don't have kids, not that. The children that's gonna come before us are gonna be affected more in this environment. You look at
absolutely
is on the rise, and there's so much on the rise that I hear things that what is the projection of us as Black people in the next 30-some years. And I tell people many times it doesn't look good, because to have Black people, you guys still have Black men, Black women, and without that building together, you don't have nothing. You get me? You could screw what's going to happen to us in the next 20 or 30 years. You already preparing the preparation that your enemy already laid out. Say, I'm going to have this. I'm going to be guaranteed this outcome. What the hell are you going to do about it? That's one thing people should really take into consideration.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, that's something that that I know you and Green Gorilla. I seen you on Green Gorilla's channel popping up a few times. So I know you're familiar with the documentary project that he's putting together, the white folk for Black people. So I'm gonna contribute to that.
It's something that when I look at him, and he just did one today. We're not going to that, but
I heard it.
My thing is this: why is it when it's time for a brother, I'm not a Black man, saying, "All right, I have some in the works. I have a team, and I want to accomplish this." It's not something in a large scale, but this is something to start the breadcrumbs, which is going to compile into making a whole bread. Now I know that sounds weird how I said that, but I want people to follow me. That I need to start we have to put it as Black males, the alternate propaganda. Because with propaganda, it keeps you as the enemy, the big mean gorilla for everybody else to attack on. Because it cannot hurt you or harm you unless they make you or prone you to be the bad guy.
Right.
If you're not the bad guy, they can't do nothing, because there has to be a good and bad guy. That's program, that's television, that's media. Who's good, who's bad. That's my right in the background.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to start developing our own content, which is why I'm starting to do more content myself and putting out more stuff. Is we have to be able to counter the narratives that are put out there, and that's why we don't have time to be hating anybody. We need to really focus on ourselves and developing ourselves, because, like you said, the projections that are happening for a Black community ain't looking good. We ain't about to have no Black community. And I think admixture and what is happening is really driving us to just be Americans. It's not you're just a Black American, like that's it. But you're American first. and a lot of people don't want to hear that because we're romanticizing Black empowerment, and we're missing what's actually happening. And we're getting admixtured as we're going. I mean, Steve Stout talked about this in the book Tanning of America. Like, that book was a catalyst. Was real. I mean, that book is
when that book came out,
ideas, old stuff. That book came out like 2008, 7. That book's old. The Tanning of America.
Right, so the book that came out 13 years ago. All right.
Yeah.
That's something that they are. If we Google the projection of Tanning of America, that was like 5, 7, actually 8 years ago, back in 2013. They projected this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if a man wrote something back in 2008, 5 years later, we see an article talking about it.
Right.
So they know where this is going, you know?
Propaganda. 2011.
Was 2011? All right. Well, that's almost a decade ago. So now they already project this is what they want, because they know say that Black people right now, because we're fractured and we don't want to do what's necessary to get like reparations, where you want to call it. So what they're gonna do say before you get to that direction, and this called HR 40 bill, I'm gonna tan you up. Yeah, I'm gonna make the population of you so whitewashed that when I give it to you, there's very little of you left.
Right.
They did this with I heard they did this with the Alaskans, not Alaska.
The Aboriginal folks down in Australia.
Yeah. There's only 30 of them. And now they're getting reparations. The ones that give, they give the ones that are not even Black.
I mean, it's the same thing. America works better if we all function similarly culturally. I'll go into deeper into this and give some research. I know when I get into something like this, folks want research to document it. But yeah, I'll go in a little deeper, because that's what I see happening. BGS talks about, I know you're familiar with BGS. Some people ain't, who's watching this, but he talks about this all the time. This is where we're headed. And I see it where you're seeing, I mean, just look at the commercials that came out just recently. You're seeing the new Black family. You're not seeing two Black parents. You're seeing a Black woman and a white male and biracial kids. And I'm not saying that's wrong or that's bad, but what I'm saying is they're preparing everybody for that image. And they're using the catalyst in our community that's going to help drive that forward. Is that a bad thing? Again, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is this is where we're being pushed to have more of American ideology and be more Americans and think similarly, because that's how we can be easily controlled. But so with that, I'm going to pause you there, sir. Again, hit me up with some dates so we can connect and I come on your broadcast, and feel free to come back on mine whenever you like.
All right. Wonderful.
All right, man. Talk to you later. Peace, man.
All right.
All right, Lino, you are up next. Get you in here. Hello, dear. How are you?
I'm all right. You?
I'm doing well. How are you? What's up? What's on your mind today?
Let me try to get this straight. I have a problem because I hear a lot about the Black man and the Black woman. And my thing is, I feel strongly about both. Black men and Black women. We both need to come together as a family unit, period. Okay. Stop this negative with each
fighting.
Other. I feel, the reason why I say I feel alone, because I'm out here in Eureka, California. My family that's around me, back east, wherever, I am the only person, I guess you could say first frequency. I don't believe in the Christmas Christ, all this stuff. Okay. And they're against that. They will not talk to me. My nephew, we just had a Zoom on the 1st. My nephew spoke about Africa and Christianity, and my sister, she's been to Africa and stuff, and she's into this Jesus thing, and she tied it all together. And it was like, when I spoke about it, it was wrong. It was wrong. I just left it alone because I'm not one, because there's 6 of us, and then the nieces and nephews, and they're all against me. So what could I do? I'm not going to argue with everybody because no one's hearing me. But there is one sister that her what I was saying. I shared about you, the Jegna. She looked that up. I shared about Reverend Shock. I shared about the sisters, all that. She looked all that up. She's like, cool. She's with me. Okay. But she's strongly into Christ or whatever. So I'm just gonna leave that alone.
Right.
But my thing is I want to encourage as many people as possible, and I'm in the center of whiteness, I guess you could say. Okay, the neighborhood, you know.
Sure.
And I don't know what else to do. Okay, I can't. I've reached out to my family as much as I can. I don't have a lot of friends. Okay. So I'm just sitting here.
Yeah.
No, I study, I research as much as possible. And I'm getting the help that I need to get better all around. You know. I don't know what else to do.
Gotcha. Yeah,
but
and I think that's go ahead.
We need to if we're gonna help each other, because I'm not to be funny, but I'm sort of getting tired of helping the men and the nieces and the nephews and stuff. Because I'm a woman. I want to be around for women, you know.
Sure.
But out here, it's really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
I'm like a sitting duck.
Yeah, and one thing I think we talked about this in the past, and I'm gonna keep encouraging for folks out there who are in similar situations as yourself, is you have to just stay in your square, and you have to keep building, make these connections online. I know that is foreign to a lot of us who are over the age of 25, but we have but you have to create your circle of support if it's not already there, and the folks that have been around you and known you for all your life, and you start coming into what Philippe calls first frequency, or you start getting just more knowledge of self, they're going to react to that. They're going to respond to that. And usually they're going to respond in a way that they're not going to say anything, or they're going to reject it, right? They may be a little open to it, but those folks who are open to it, they ain't going to say nothing because it's counter to what they know. That's their comfort zone. That's what they know about you. But you have to keep building your message. The same thing happened to me. Back in 2010, 11, and 12, when Brandon was extremely pro-black, folks here watching this right now on Facebook, family members, they was like, this nigga's crazy. That's literally what they thought. Like, this nigga crazy. Like, I was at a point where, like, all my posts were all pro. I was coming at everybody. All white folks was getting it all day on my Facebook. And it became a situation where my family didn't know how to even talk to me when I was around them, because they're like, is he going to start talking about racism all the time? What I got to a point where, because everybody does this when they start getting consciousness, is you want everybody else to wake up and to understand and know what's happening. That is the wrong approach. You are going to push them away even farther. You stay in your square, say the things that you say, be who you are, and then racism will slap them in the face. Please believe. When Trayvon Martin happened, I know locally here, when we had Philando Castile got murdered, that was a wake-up call for a lot of black folks who didn't want to talk about these issues. When Black Lives Matter, even though I have huge issues with that organization, when that started, that got black folks a little bit more comfortable with even talking about racism out in public. So it's a process to move forward and to get to having these conversations, or even considering people who are living this life about being more first frequency or pro-black. And it's not that they're wrong and you're right. It's that you chose a different path to be completely honest with yourself about what's happening in this world. And that's okay. And you see, like you said when you came on, you're not really into the European holiday thing, not your thing. Ain't nothing wrong with that. And guess what? I was there too, but that almost destroyed my marriage. So I had to have some sacrifice, and I had to have some understanding on how far I can go with this before I start excluding myself from the people that I love and care about the most. That is hard for black folks. Go ahead.
Question.
Yep.
I was talking to my sister the other day, and she's a bit phobic. So she said, "Can you pray for me?" My praying is different now. So what I did was, I said the usual prayer with her. And when we were done, I didn't say in Jesus Christ's name. I just said, your ancestors will help us. And she was like, "But you prayed for me but you don't believe in Jesus. And I said, yes, this is what you believe. This is how you pray. So that's what I did.
Right.
The other thing is my mom that I call mom, she's white. Mm-hmm. When I went to her and I let her know, look, I'm looking for a therapist, and right now I'm on Medicare and all that. Mm-hmm. But the woman that I want to see, she's African and she's black, and she doesn't that. I need some help.
Oh, you're borging out.
So, are you there?
I'm here. You're frozen on the screen, but I can hear you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. How about I'm gonna bounce you out and then come back. All right, while we're getting Lena back on, I'm gonna roll over to Brother LeVar, who will be joining us. What's up, sir? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well. I'm glad you put me on your platform. I'm glad you've been doing the great work out here for the people. Yes. So yeah, just just want to come in and put my 2 cents in. On the flip side, I think the world is changing. When it comes to Black folks, I think a lot of Black folks, especially the millennium, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They are changing, and they are not falling in line. In the ways that our ancestors did. Our mothers probably did. And a lot of them are becoming more independent, and a lot of them are following the information and taking a stand. And I think that's great, and just just what you're talking about. What you was talking about earlier when you were saying how important it is to look at your family history. That is something I did as well. And I even, ask the questions when it comes to my aunts, my uncles, everybody who knew anything about my family. I'm still learning, through other people's story, which is, when you ask questions, you get to kind of fill in those gaps and those understanding. Even if you don't get back to slavery, like for me, I went into the library. I'm in Dallas, Texas. We have, a pretty good genealogy library. And I met an older brother who helped me, do that. And within the records, it showed, different history, where people made a certain amount of money, or if they was living for free, certain places. And looking at my family history and our trauma, we deal with a lot of, how can I say this? We kind of like real stubborn and really hard to forgive family members. And with that said, as I came into the information, I'm like you, they started looking at me like I was crazy. They didn't know how to come at me. They didn't know how to talk to me, and a lot of people started to like, hey man, he's tripping, But I was big on that too, trying to share information and stuff like that. But I backed up, and it's like I had to tell people, I'm big on information. I love my people, but I'm still me. I'm still loving, still easy to come to, easy to talk to. But I'm trying to help our people to wake up. And that's why I, me and my brothers, we help with the men's healing session. What you're doing, it's been powerful. And I've been reaching out to all the people in my circle. And these are people who are Christians. You got people who are Muslim. You got people in the conscious community. And I'm saying we all are brothers. We all dealing with the same struggles. We all, are, really trying to figure out how to really navigate and to be leaders, within our community, within ourselves. And I'm always trying to push out, like, you ain't got to wait on nobody to lead you. You can do it yourself, but you got to learn how to heal and share the stuff that's holding you back.
Right. Absolutely. And the key thing, one thing that, I always talked about in therapy is when I introduce myself to a client, I always say, if this don't work for you, let me know and I'll try to help find somebody that may be a better fit for you. And it always kind of throw them off. And I'm like, I might not be the answer for you or your son or your child or whatnot. I might just be able to help you get to what's right. And that's the same thing you're doing, right? If we're all going to Chicago, you say you down in Texas, I'm in Minnesota, I might drive. You might fly. Somebody from the West Coast, they might want to take a train and sightsee throughout the mountains or whatever, right? We're all taking a different vehicle to the same destination. And that's the same thing I see with Black folks. One of the things due to our trauma that we have that we really have to learn how to work on is when people have alternative beliefs than us or even thought processes that we can't continue to build and connect with them. We have to get away from that because that's really hurting us and keeping us back, man. And I see it all the time. And especially in these pro-Black circles, man, it's like, oh, he's a coon, so I ain't gonna talk to him. Well, that coon might have some constructive information that may be helpful for you. Now, you don't have to listen to everything that person say, but you might be able to get something out of them to help you move forward. And so don't just assume because this person, might have a viewpoint on one little thing that one, they can't change, and two, that they don't have something constructive for you. And I see that all the time, man. And I've even seen it, back in my extremely pro-Black days. I'm like, I ain't read no books by no white authors because white people lie and I ain't gonna learn nothing from them. And I'm like, that right there is not gonna help me understand their cultural paradigm, which is gonna help me solve the problem. I have to understand why they think the way they think because they'll tell a lot on themselves in the things that they put out because they love documenting stuff. So we have to be more open to experiences and exposure to things. But if you keep your own Black base, if you keep being Black centered, then it's a little easier to navigate between the non-constructive stuff and the constructive stuff. But shout out your men's group so I can make sure that people, who want to connect to it can connect to it.
I don't have a name yet. I'm just saying it's a men conference I do every Wednesday, and I do it on the Zoom. You can get the information using on my page from Facebook, or you can reach out to me on my number, and I can see information if you're not my friend on Facebook. Or you can reach my email, which is you can go to helping my little brother at gmail.com, and it's just how you sound. And because I have a nonprofit that I do when helping young men that I'm helping to build up. But right now I realize that we got to build up our men in order to help build up our young kings as well. Because I understand that I need a team. So my phone number as well is going to be, yep, that is correct. My phone number is 469-951-2573. And one thing I learned within my man circle, is that it's been very, very helpful. And I've been having more younger men come on and being open and being expressive, to the healing and wanting to help, versus the older generation. And that's been surprising to me, And then we got some people within my generation as well. Even if they come from the Christian community, the information that we're putting, I'm with a powerful brother who's been doing the healing work he does every day. And my experience, they've been very open and, trying to understand how can they get closer with themselves? How can they get closer within a marriage, their girlfriends? Right. How can they figure out how to heal, to be able to be open to meet different people and build, different relationships? And I think we get caught up in so much of like, we got to have the same circle for years. You know what I mean? This is my ride or die, right. For so long. But I think it's so important for us to stay open because as we grow, as we elevate, we're going to meet a lot of people within our journey. And then within the people we meet within our journey, it's going to help us to find ourselves. It's going to help us to build our circle. It's going to help us to, get stronger and, to build things within our community. And some people just got to leave behind because, one thing about it, it's consistent, it's growth, and I think that's important.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. People, check out helpingmylittlebrother@gmail.com if you would like more information on the men's conference that takes place every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. It starts at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, every Wednesday. And I've been doing it for about 7 months now, and it's been great.
Perfect. Definitely. Well, I'm going to have to come swing through. I start teaching I got to prep this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, but I teach every other Wednesday. So on one of my off Wednesdays, I'm gonna come check y'all out, man.
I appreciate it. And I'll send you a link whenever you're ready, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna bounce you out now. Much appreciated. Check you later. All right.
Hey.
So you are back, ma'am. Let's see if we get you right now. We can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. Let me take LeVar's information down. All right. So, do you remember what you were saying? Because I don't.
Yeah, I do. I do.
All right.
I was saying
Go ahead, Lena.
I wanted to see a Black therapist, African therapist, and when I was like 35, when I met my mom, she was all gung ho and helping me do that, but then I fell by the wayside, you know.
Yep.
And but now that I'm doing that, oh man, I get so much backlash. It's not even funny. It's like no help, but it's like I'm doing it, I'm making it happen, and it will happen. And as far as my family, they're real hush hush because they don't like me to talk about my family past, any of that.
Right.
And we have to start somewhere. So I'm in therapy. I'm doing it, making it work.
Yep.
And I got to start talking. I can't keep holding everything in because I'm only hurting me.
Yep.
You know, and I need to grow. I want to do things and make it happen. But my therapist asked me today, what are you doing to help yourself? And so I told her about you. I told her about Red Shock and the sisters and everything. So it was really good. You know, I didn't self-sabotage. I didn't, you know, it was great. It was great. It was awesome. And I want to thank you for that, for being
absolutely.
There, you know?
Absolutely. No worries at all. I always tell folks, if I'm free, if I have the time, I'll help you. And if I can't, I'll connect you to somebody who can, or try to connect you to someone who can. So thank you. Thank you for that. It's much appreciated. And continue on your healing journey. We're all on one. Some of us just have different facilitators on that journey. Some of us have different tools and things in our knapsacks, but we're all on this journey for sure. So I'm glad that I was able to assist you as best as I could. So much appreciated.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Well, I'll see you later, Lena. Talk to you. Take care and keep doing the work. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
All right. So finally getting this StreamYard thing together, folks. That's Ask the Jegna. People come on, they share their perspectives on topics. If you have topics, feel free to join Ask the Jegna, the Facebook group. You can just search Ask the Jegna. And then it'll pop up and you'll be added to the group. You can share comments on the show there. You can share topics that you want to talk about, or you can even provide topics for me to talk about. Like today's topic was on, does Brandon hate white people? I don't hate white people. I do believe that white people have constructive value. I think that due to the destruction that white people have caused many black people, and I would say non-white people, that a lot of times we don't see that value due to the pain that they've caused, but we know that we have to move beyond this society that we currently have. I think that the what I call the managers of the universe are moving us towards a particular state, and they're eliminating what we know now as black culture, and they're making it quote unquote mainstream culture, which ultimately will become American culture. This is a topic that I will dive into a lot more later. I'll probably just put together a presentation so people can see what I'm talking about, and they're not just hearing my voice, but they have some visuals of what I mean. But this is where we're at. But at the end of the day, no matter what's happening, we have to heal. We have to get our healing together, because there's been so much damage done to us by this society and just interpersonally that it's hard for us to see anything different. And it's easy for us to hate somebody because they're white, or hate somebody because they're black. Because to be honest, one of the biggest things that I think that black people face is anti-blackness, which is an offshoot of dealing with racism, white supremacy. And the anti-blackness is so deep that oftentimes it's easier for us to tear each other down than it is to tear the system down that we're dealing with. And that's where I see a lot of us at, and we have to be able to move beyond it. So don't waste your time hating white folks, because at the end of the day, how they feel about you don't matter, especially if you are gaining power and organizing, because then you have backup to protect yourself to the best of possible. And here come brother Cleo Monago. You ready to get on, Cleo? Easier for us to tear each other down than it is
what's up, man?
What's going on, sir? Mute me in the background so we can hear you clear.
See what the hell I'm doing.
So don't waste your time. Because at the end of the day.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly, sir. Welcome. Good to hear you, man.
Well, good to see you, stranger. You stopped talking to a brother, so it's good to see you. Turn on the TV, and there you is.
Hey, man, you got big time, man. You was on TV.
Oh,
you a guest here, guest there. You got too big for me, man.
No, man. Not only am I never too big for you, but I'm very, very excited to see what you're doing. Because it's extremely important to have the conversations that you're having. And the more, as I've told you when I first met you, the more Black male de-crazification people that we have, therapists, etc., the better, because it's not enough. It's not enough.
Right.
But ironically, right before you picked me up, you said what I wanted to say, which was that our primary issue, and I know this for a fact and don't got time to get into how I know it for a fact because your show is not mine and I don't want to go forever, but our primary issue, our final frontier that we are barely addressing is internalized white supremacy.
Exactly.
Internalized anti-Blackness.
It's so bad.
That's way worse than white supremacy mythology, because we have been living in a normalized, unresolved state of anti-Black cultural norms for several centuries, and we've learned to prey on it and dress on it and get new hair on it and get dramatic on it and perfect our adaptation to it instead of resisting it and decoding it.
Absolutely.
And as somebody who is Black affirming and been pro-Black for, it ain't gonna stop, for several generations, not generations. What's that? What does 10 years add up to? A what? Decade.
Decade. Yeah.
For several decades. I know what it's like to be in a room and be calm and collected and feel good and relax, but say something pro-Black and folks, I'm talking about Black folks now.
Yeah, get uncomfortable
and mad at you and very defensive toward white people. That's why when you talked about Black people, enslaving Black people, something I've studied. I've literally studied the slave trade, not only intellectually, but I've walked the walk.
Yeah.
I've went there. I went to all the slave dungeons in the Caribbean, on the continent, here. I mean, it's something that made a lot of difference to me, and I did a lot of research. And we can't even afford to talk about Black dysfunction without context.
Right. Yes.
We can't even afford it, because something else that you said in your last show, which is literally a chapter in my book, you call it Nas, I call it Nas, but we talk about the same thing.
Yeah.
I have a chapter in my book called that.
Yeah.
And that unconscious mantra is our issue. So when we hear that Black people enslave Black people, it embeds and deepens the anti-Black, because it's like, not only are you NAS here, you NAS there.
Yes.
And you NAS all over the place. We cannot afford to allow that mythology, in terms of it being universalized and racialized among Black people, to sit there unchallenged. We have to watch what we say, because it's easy to default into anti-Blackness.
Yep.
As easy as it is breathing in and out. It's extremely easy. So part of our work to repair the landscape is to decode anything that's anti-Black, even when it's a legitimate critique of Blackness, put it in context so we won't go into the unconscious mythology of us being naturally tainted.
That is true. And I appreciate you bringing that up and challenging me on that, because that is a very true point, and I don't want that to get lost, because that's what we will go to and stick with. We do it all the time. We'll go straight to how we hurt each other, and we'll stay there and miss the whole point.
Yeah. And I also think, this is just me, this is not a recommendation, just Cleo's perspective. I think how white people feel about us is irrelevant.
Agreed. Don't matter. At the end of the day, I still got to take care of these responsibilities and make sure that I'm doing my healing. Don't matter.
It doesn't matter how you feel.
Go ahead.
It don't matter. What matters is that we are repaired and that we learn to love ourselves in our own image.
Right.
That's what matters. And finding a nice white person that you said you found one earlier. I think you said you found 2 or 3 or something. Anyway.
I didn't say they were nice. I said that they're cool. Cool and nice don't mean the same thing. There's certain levels that you have to tolerate, and something else I should break down is there's different levels of relationships. Like, you don't have to be best friend. You can just be associates with people. And it's more of a business transaction than anything. But that's a whole nother show that I ain't gonna get into today. Yeah.
So. Yeah. But I just want to affirm you, and I also wanted to just raise those issues because the final frontier that Black people, and I've been trying for years, and I've seen people literally take out that topic from an agenda that I've created. And I've been asked to speak places, and they keep taking it out. I wrote a curriculum for the Center for Disease Control, and I talked about the fact that risk reduction and behavior change requires having a working critical analysis of the society you live in and understanding cause and effect as it relates to race context. They took all of that out.
Wow. Because it gets to the truth of the matter. If you really want to make change of people, you have to look at the context in which they're in and how these dynamics connect to one another, because that's what's leading to the behaviors that you see. That's why when you see young Black men in the quote unquote hood who got guns, it's easier for them to shoot at one another than it is all the cops that are over policing the community. It's because they've been conditioned to see that authority as something higher than themselves. And they have a low bar of understanding on who they are. They're just another nigga. And it's easy for me to kill a nigga than it is to kill a cracker. So to quote unquote, if we want to even use that term, right? That's the mentality, right? And it's hard because when you try to get folks to understand that the reason why we see the things that we see, just looking at just violence in our community, it's because we don't value one another. We value white above everything.
Have you seen a show called Your Honor? Have you heard of the show called Your Honor?
I've heard of a Showtime. I seen it pop up a couple days ago. I haven't seen it. I haven't watched it though. What about it?
Man, I ain't gonna dominate your show. I'm gonna get ready to go, but I'm gonna tell you right now, they ain't playing. I'm talking about white folks. They ain't playing with their relentless campaign to turn everybody against us, including ourselves. They are not playing. And you already referenced earlier about the perpetual disproportionate biracial representation on TV and the straight up agenda that's teaching Black people that to have a better life, go to whiteness, and that
really
loving
Black women. It's not even Black people. It's geared at Black women, but that's a whole other thing.
Well, that's true, but it's also geared at Black men. I think it may be the support geared at Black women, but it's geared at Black men too, and that's heterosexual Black men and homosexual Black men.
Yep.
And they're because one of the issues that they understand is that when you become an interracialist, I'm talking about the Black people, you become less likely to be loyal to Blackness.
Yes. Yeah.
And they don't want us to be loyal to Blackness because the more we're loyal to Blackness, the more we're a risk to them and their power.
Exactly.
So they're making us love them, and they're working really, really hard. And I promise I'm gonna close this time because you said something I just remember that worked my last nerve, and that was that these young people these days are more bold and more. It was I think his name was a brother that was
Chaos Rain said that. Yeah,
I completely disagree with him, and I would love to talk with you all about that. We're confusing with shame and ego humiliation reaction with transformation.
Right.
What we're seeing is people humiliated from like what happened to Castile on tape, bloody and shot. That's humiliating. So we're having a knee-jerk compensatory reaction to that humiliation, but we're not fighting for Black humanity.
Yeah. No.
And the rehumanization of Black people because we think NAS, and these young people are not more bold and more that ain't true. They're more straight up and more performance acting, but that's not true.
Right, but
we're fooling ourselves.
Yeah, and they don't have a proper understanding of how the system works. These young people think that racism is police brutality. It's like you missed everything else. Like that's because that's been the aim. Let's look at this police state, and if you got issues, then you focus on that because that's what they're seeing racism as, and they're missing how racism has impacted all these other areas and how that influence to go out there and protest and do things they're doing is racist in itself. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep, and their love for white women and white men is racism itself.
Right. Could you be conditioned? All right, but we can go back and forth all day. Maybe we should set up a time where me and you just hop on and just go back and forth, man.
I'd love to, man.
All right.
You got it. Just let me know.
Sounds good. Talk to you later, man. Take care.
All right. Good talking to you, man.
Yep, absolutely. Uh-oh. We got the man, the myth, the legend get ready to come on. Right when I'm getting ready to close out. Let me get you on here. Cerulean Gray. What's up, sir?
Well, greetings, esteemed brethren.
Greetings.
Yeah, I'm glad you're going live regularly. You know, good, man.
It's been about time, man.
Yeah, man, you can take over. Yeah, I'm ready to step all the way back. I actually have more fun as more enjoyment as a spectator. Because as soon as this this COVID thing is over, my organization, DFTC St. Paul, we're going to get back to work.
Yeah,
having the community events and all of that. Go back to doing the rites of passage, helping the young brothers get licenses and all of that.
Yeah.
And so this is actually, YouTube's actually kind of taken away a lot of time, because it's a lot, and I know there's a couple of times that you and I were supposed to get together.
Yep.
But the conflicting schedules is just so hectic. Because I know you were building your thing out in Minneapolis with the boys over there, and you're doing your thing in St. Paul. New organization on the rise. So I know how hectic that is. Trying to mix that with family life is just
it's crazy. Yeah.
And we're at a critical nexus where I basically dubbed this year 2021 begins the decade of decline. We're too scatterbrained about everything. If you remember how when the $15 an hour minimum wage
was a big deal,
struck off,
that
campaign started here in the Twin Cities.
Yep.
And you're seeing how it was almost like it gave you hope to see how amped up and galvanized the young folk here were.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with this generation is keeping that energy for everything, because you have to move on to the next thing. You can't get stuck on it. Okay, you got $15 an hour minimum wage. It's on the table now. Right. It's on the table now for federal review.
Right.
You got to keep the chain, going. So you can galvanize for that. You got to galvanize for the other things. I remember going over to, if you remember when the Democratic Labor Party was meeting over at Johnson High School for the caucus on legalized marijuana.
Marijuana. Yep.
Did you look at that place? Tumbleweed showed up.
Yeah. They had something at Metro State too around that. I think it was around that same time that I was doing something else, but I was able to pop in for a minute, and it wasn't very well attended. And the folks that were there were like folks that were already in the marijuana business, but they weren't even local people. They were just coming into the
Yeah, that's the other thing, is a lot of them were like these older white folk from states where they already had legal marijuana. Like, I met a couple of dudes from Colorado, and and they were telling me how it's expensive to do business in Colorado. Even as a white person, right? Yeah. Because the tobacco companies kind of run everything, like all of your licensing and all that goes through to the tobacco companies. So they were literally here, trying to teach folks like what to go for if there's going to be legalized marijuana, what to go for to make it easier for the small person to get into the business.
Yeah.
And the tumbleweed showed up. A couple of elderly white folks showed up. There was a handful. I seen a handful of black women. I had to find one other brother. It was like finding Where's Waldo.
Yeah.
It's like, Where's Waldo? And he was wearing a red and white shirt. You know, he's wearing a red and white polo shirt.
Was he a Kappa?
No, he wasn't a Kappa.
All right. Let me stop messing with people.
I know you're trying to get something started here.
I'm gonna leave you alone.
Because you know a certain someone you know who is also a Kappa. But yeah, so keeping that chain going on the political issues. Like I'm watching, as you know, here in Twin Cities, Black women are actually killing it. You know, they're killing it right now. It's undeniable. Trying to get brothers amped up for their own political kind of thing. That is the challenge. Because if it doesn't involve like sexual access or some illusion of class stratification, you know, or the classic money, cars, clothes, hoes, I'm just keeping it 100, man. Niggas ain't trying to have nothing to do with it, you know. And we're looking at, you know, a ticking time bomb where if it's 2021 and, you know, Brookings report, you know, Department of Labor statistics, you know, say, look, Black wealth is going to be null and void by 2053. I mean, if you had a baby right now, by the time that they're 32 years old, they're not even looking at any prospects. You know, so like that's what we're kind of looking at, and that's really where I want to keep the conversation, because as you know, right now we have the space kind of flooded with, you know, relationships, dating, and mating advice. It's like, how are you gonna have a dating life? How you gonna have a dating life if your economics ain't even straight? You see what I'm saying? If your economics ain't even straight, you're not even gonna have a dating life. If your economics ain't even straight, you're not even gonna have a home life. You know, and that's like where we need to keep the conversation. Like when we're talking about the overall that overarching kind of problem that we have with like racism, white supremacy. What we're actually talking about is an economic thing. I mean, when you break it down to its base elements, that's what you're really looking at is economics. What was racism and Jim Crow? Economics. What was mass incarceration? It was economics. What was the crack epidemic? That was economics. Right. Why are all of these things related to economics? Right. Because the argument that we're really trying to have is an economic one. But when we come on to you know, say a YouTube or, you know, Facebook is, which is why I closed down Facebook.
Yeah, it's all relationships.
You know, you let the average, you know, Negro tell you, you know, he's making 6 figures. He's getting this money. Right. And they're like, well, hey, by that account, hey, that works for me because we need the brothers with some resources. So let's get this thing going. There's a campaign right now that specifically speaks to the needs of Black men in our locale. Oh well, you know, they get the sucking their teeth. Oh man, you need it right now. Like, am I bringing it to you right now? Like, yeah, you know, right. And so it gives this you know, this misinformed picture, right? Because if we're gonna say that all the brothers making 6 figures, how the hell is there so much pervasive dysfunction happening with all of these 6-figure brothers? Like, you mean to tell me you can afford rims but you can't afford therapy? Right. But so it gives this false kind of image of what the Black community is. Yes, because if another community needed to look at a snapshot of what the Black community is, they'll say there is no racism, there is no you're not being disenfranchised because everybody that I meet in social media is 6-figure guys. What to do?
Right.
And then on the other side of that, when you got a brother that really does need help, right? He's not able to get the help that he needs because people assume that he hasn't. You mean you can't go around telling people you're a 6-figure guy, and then whenever you actually really need help, you're really in trouble.
Right.
Now you're too embarrassed, suffering from this manic self-inflicted shame to even tell people, look, I really don't got it like that, and I really do need the help. Because you're watching these fancy, these people that are literally lying to you on social media, advertising as if their lives are just so well.
Right.
And so that right there.
Yeah.
Those are the things that we need to work on. Now, the third part of it is that you have this over-genderized conversation. The bomb dropped. This bomb dropped on black men, but it didn't drop on black women. But you're talking about a group of people. You're talking about a group of people who's only been free for better part 66 years, 67.
Right.
Who's only been able to take part in voting for 67 years. Has only been able to exercise some level of autonomy for 67 years, and then you're expecting them to just have it all together as if they've had some kind of uninterrupted chain of culture.
Right. And we have a bunch of startup institutions. We don't have institutions to push our culture forward because we've been assimilated to others' institutions.
And see, I don't really have a problem with that, because I would say that because we are American people.
Yeah. Because
we are American people, the American institutions are very much just as much ours as they are anyone else's.
Okay.
Whether that be the institution of education, the Department of Education, whether that be the police, whether that be the military, it doesn't matter what facet. All of these institutions, because you are an American, these are very much yours as much as anybody else's.
Yeah.
And that's where the conversation has to be, because again, you only got 32 years to get it together.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying goes along with what I've said in the last couple of broadcasts is where we're headed. I think, and this what's been called the black pill kind of philosophy or whatever is like we ain't got enough time to even do half the stuff we thought we wanted to do. Like this game's almost over, so we need to play ball at elite level, or we don't know what's going to happen to us next. What are your thoughts?
And you have to remember, this is still all new, navigating new terrain. Like this political, this economic and social terrain is all relatively new.
Right.
You really think about it. I mean, maybe the sentiment behind it is very old, but for our generation, this is still all new terrain to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I suspect, and this is what I've always said, is that somewhere down the line, post Civil Rights Act 1964, the Negro got a little lazy, assumed that he had arrived, and it left the generation behind it ill prepared to deal with the changing of the times. That generation back then didn't know that America was going to go off the gold standard. That generation didn't know America was going to go into Vietnam, and that being the precursor to fatherless homes. They like to surmise it and make this microwavable answer and say it's the welfare state. But if that were true, then we'd have to say the same thing for white America, considering that nearly 60% of white homes are on the welfare.
Right.
But there's something specific whenever it comes to Black society, as Sandy Derry put it. I mean, you have a Black college graduate who will only make 2/3 of what a white high school dropout makes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so that element that is economic.
Right.
That is economic. Why is the community failing? Because of lack of economics, or rather wealth, resources, and opportunities.
Right.
That's as plain and simple. That's Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. Compensatory Code, 1974.
Yep.
And what happens when we get to doing the genderized thing, it mucks up the water. So now it's not just black people. No. It's only black men. It's not black people. So when they're talking about niggas ain't shit, no, they're only talking about black women.
Black men.
Or black
what women. Do you mean?
No, I'm saying it's genderized. I'm talking about the genderized conversation. So now it's attached to a gender as opposed to what the American zeitgeist has always said was that black people in general ain't shit.
Right.
And then what happens is that we tend to make true that prophecy just by the excessive infighting. The excessive infighting to the need to want to be right over simply just doing what's right.
Right.
Like, you know how disgusted I get when I back when it was still warm out and I would see like dudes going around doing, they would do stuff for the community, but not without a camera there.
It's still happening now, Cerulean, man. It's still, even though it's cold and they got masks on, they out there doing the same thing, man.
Yeah, I seen some of the brothers push them off the block down there by the XL Center, right? Like, man, I get off the block with the camera, right? You know what I mean?
I ain't surprised. That's the worst place to be too. Trying to show off something, get caught around one of them corners.
Look what I'm doing for these folks down here at Dorothy Day Catholic Charities.
Right. Yeah.
And it's that being stuck in people's brains, right? They're saying, well, this guy over here, he must be doing well because he's out here helping the community. But see, the thing is, what they're getting confused that he's exploiting impoverished folk,
right, to uplift himself
for social media clout,
right. Which at the end of the day is not an uplift, because I do a lot of work in the nonprofit world. And some of the well-known black men in the nonprofit world, they still broke. They still stuck at a level, or their organizations don't get funded very well. But you would assume that they're doing really well because they posting pictures everywhere, right? They may have a connection to one of our local newspapers. They post it up in there. But at the end of the day, they're not really advanced. It's all clout. It's just to have a name. So when people are at them tables and they're saying, well, who could we go to in the black community? Your name comes up and that makes you feel good. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. And then the most visual people are the ones that people assume that are our leaders. These are your Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton's. Like, they don't know what the people need. They haven't been down in the in the trenches like that. That's why when I hear a lot of these guys, on the internet, and they're repeating stuff that they heard in the mainstream, and it's like, that's not even necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
Like, on one hand, for instance, with the genderized conversation about black women, it's like, when's the last time you really actually been around like actual black women? like they decorate the halls of academia like you wouldn't believe. They decorate your local city hall like you wouldn't believe. Like, you look at, like, for instance, Minneapolis City Hall.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time at.
Man, so many black women down there. Like,
there's not many black males. Typically, the ones that are, they're on kind of a consultant basis, so they're in and they're out, or they're young black men who are like interns, but there ain't a lot of black males at all.
Well, I could say for the younger people, the younger males that are coming up, have taken a more serious interest in it. So they're probably more willing to be interns to kind of learn the ropes.
Yeah.
You know, like whenever I was doing the campaign thing, you know, I would just walk into, you know, the office, say, yeah, how can I help you? Oh, we need you to pass out these flyers. Hey, no problem. I'll take the flyers with me, you know, hire some you know, kids. Hey, you guys $50, you go hang up these flyers around the city, put them in every barber shop, nail salon, you know, grocery store, you know, yada yada yada. And they'll do that, you know, happily. You know, it's nothing for that.
Right.
And those kind of campaigns actually work pretty well because, as you know, that's the majority of where, you know, Black folks spend a lot of their time. You know, barbershop, nail shop, grocery store, public library. You know, so this idea that we're not, you know, that we're just running around here, you know, shooting people left and right and shooting people down like dogs. I mean, according to them, it shouldn't be nothing but like 6 niggas left in the United States. You know?
Right. It is bad though, but it ain't like you would assume.
Right. Is it bad whenever, you know, there's a loss of life by the hands of another Black person? Yes, it's sad. And the whole community actually does come together. Like, you know what, this is some bullshit. Person responsible needs to be held accountable for this. The problem is that the mainstream doesn't want to push that to where we solve our own problems.
Yeah.
The mainstream wants to present this issue as something that has to be solved by them. And that's reality. You know, you saw how Jamar Clark, Black community came together. Philando Castile, we saw it here in Twin Cities. We saw how the entire Black community of the Twin Cities came together. That was never publicized because the mainstream says we cannot show an image of them fixing their own problems.
I mean, even with George Floyd this summer, when you look at North Minneapolis and St. Paul, for the most part, that was Black women on the ground organizing in both spaces to make sure the community had what they needed. Now, South Minneapolis was a little different. They had a lot more national attention, but you still had Black folks on the ground organizing, making sure that the community had what they needed. That was never publicized on a national level and barely even on a local level.
It was never brought to anybody's attention. I mean, every time I saw a campaign for the George Floyd thing, it was a Black woman sharing it. It's a Black woman, you know, putting the flyers on the cars, right? You go pull in somewhere, you got some, you know, the Black girl putting the flyer in your windshield wiper. Like, this is where we organizing at. I remember when the Black Panther Party Cubs came back out here, and I happened to be pretty cool with Fred Jr. Whenever they came back out here, it was the sisters that was going around saying, "Look, the Black Panther Party Club's going to be here. This is the address where we're going to all meet at." You know, yada yada yada. They were doing so much ground organizing that whenever you actually got there, you know, you thought you were going in like a Woodstock or something. I mean, there's so much going on.
Right.
It was like this is what they put together.
Right.
You know, it doesn't get publicized because the mainstream is always dictated. They cannot show you solving your own problems or caring about your own problems.
Right. Because again, we have to be emotionally connected to what they do and what they don't do for us, because that's what keeps us controlled. It's one of the ways that we stay controlled. But again, one thing that you're bringing up that's very important, and I see it in these Twin Cities all the time. Really, it's one big ass city, but I see it all the time. Is that Black women make things happen here? Period. Like and they'll uplift a Black male voice here and there too. But really, at the end of the day, they are the women who make things happen in the Black community here. Period. And you even see it with the last elections that we had locally. You had, I think it was like a record number of Black women who were actually being up for office. Like they just make, and they were all, and most of them were supporting each other, which was also something that you don't see in politics.
Which is something that you rarely ever see.
Yeah,
and that's goes above race and
right.
gender. Like you rarely see anybody, politics is basically a snake pit. Hold on, I should be the one, on the front. Yeah.
Right. Right.
No, I should be the one on the front. But you had all these sisters, supporting each other, giving sizable amounts of donations to each other's campaigns. Like you had them pushing up one brother over in I think it was either Robbinsdale or Bloomington. The tall light skinned brother.
Yeah. What's his name? I know who you're talking about. Yep.
He's come to a couple of events, but yeah, they was pushing them up, and now he sits on in the city hall for Bloomington.
Right.
And so, it's so like a lot of the things that are being espoused is just untrue, unrealistic. Maybe 50 years ago it might have been true, because niggas still wasn't shit 50 years ago.
Well, I think in terms of the dating conversation, I think a lot of what happens in the manosphere has some validity to it. But I think there's so much pain and trauma there that we don't really have a completely honest conversation about it. We just get into blaming and fighting all the time. And I'll be honest with you, man. I think that black women want black men to heal more than black men do. Most of the black male clients I have were either referrals from women that they were in their families or they were dating, or they actually brought them there. They were like, it wasn't even a referral. It was like, I need you to talk to this person. And it's always been black women.
Well, I'll put it like this, right? Like take for instance the swirling community, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they said, that the black manosphere was created to be an answer to the anti-black male stuff being pushed by the swirlers. But you haven't heard anything from the swirling community for years.
They just came back out when our boy KS came back. Got popular. They popped their heads back out. But yeah, you haven't. They just kind of disappeared.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but you got I mean, Kevin is a suspicious character.
Oh, we can talk about that later. Sure, yes, sure.
I mean, anytime you got a suspicious Negro, telling somebody that they're average at best and they're going to die alone. I mean, here's a reality: everybody dies alone. Last time I checked, they don't stack your loved ones in the coffin with you.
Sure don't. Yeah, man. I don't want to get on that grift, man. I don't know how he's become like the center of all these talking points, but everybody is talking about him and getting views, man. He has become like, it's just like when Donald Trump first got elected. Everybody started talking about Trump, everybody started popping. Candace owns all those people. Next thing you know, boom. Here's Kevin. Kevin is like the new talking point for whatever strain. It's interesting to just see that growth, because I remember listening to BGS.
But that would symbolize like it shows just how much therapy is actually needed.
Yeah,
because one, you're reacting to one, a Negro that's already suspicious.
Yeah.
Two, you have a suspicious Negro dubbing himself as the marker for what quote unquote high value man is. Even though nothing about him says high value man. I mean, let's just be honest. If you really look at Kevin, there's really no difference between him and the D-boy in the hood, wearing his life savings on his back. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really no difference.
Yeah.
But I do find it awfully suspicious to me, because some people would say that, he told old girl the truth. It was like, no, he told her his version of the truth. It's like, what is the absolute truth? The absolute truth is that this is a woman with a sizable amount of resources. And because this is gaining access to wealth generating avenues is relatively new, especially to Black folk and in particular Black women, they haven't learned how to navigate this access to economics the way that men have always navigated.
Right.
So of course he's not going to be open to this idea to where she has the date down, because that typically wasn't normalized. That wasn't normal behavior. Wealth was locked out from women,
right,
long before there was ever a first slave here in the United States. And so whenever slaves became the next depressed group, I mean, you're talking about another 150 years since Reconstruction fighting, 67 since they got their right to vote, 40 that they come into the ability to make their own wealth.
Right.
So you're talking about 40 years they've been able to make their own wealth, and you're expecting her to have the same mindset as a man typically would.
Right.
Because a man on a certain socioeconomic level isn't averse to dating down. But for a woman who women have always been trained to go for someone of a higher socioeconomic strata.
Hypergamy, yeah. That doesn't make any sense to her just from a nature standpoint. I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
But you're saying that 40 years is new to you. You're supposed to have it together already to be able to know this.
I see what you're saying. Yes, because I was one of those people who said they told her the truth. I think you're right. I do think he told her his truth, and I think there's a couple different things going on in this particular situation. Is that one, he talked to her in a way that you don't hear men publicly talk to women. That's one thing. I think he told her the truth from his perspective, but I see the context that you added in, which is if you look at it from how would she know how to even do that based on her nature? So there's a lot of different factors there. So I see what you're saying, and you're getting me to think about this a lot differently than I did before.
And so they're expecting, these women whom all of this like wealth generating and all of that is new to, expecting them to act the way that men are supposed to act.
Right. Play the game as it's always been played, but not understanding that things have changed. Yes. Wow. That's an interesting point too. And also, is it really wealth? I mean, she just has a high income. Like that's a whole nother piece of this too. Is like when we have these conversations about social economics, there's a lot that goes into that we don't always get to. And when you get a person or a Black woman, for this instance, who makes over six figures, that's a different dynamic than a Black woman who doesn't, or even a Black man who does. So it's an interesting piece that we have to look at in a contextual frame than just judging.
According to the
60-minute clip.
According to the Department of Labor statistics, only 3% of Black men even make over 100K.
It's not,
yes. And so that's a fallacy that he's running with already. That there's just these one, it's a false assumption to say that just because you make six figures that makes you a high value man.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you make six figures, but nigga don't even know how to change a tire. You're too scared to pop a finger. You're too scared to pop a fingernail changing the oil on a car. Yeah, real useless ass high value man. You ask me.
Damn, that is true. Yeah, and that's something. And I don't know if you noticed, but I dipped out. I dipped out for a moment from all the manosphere stuff because it just got redundant for me. and it got too focused on women. And I'm just like, it was going in a direction where we were doing, geopolitics, we were doing personal development.
And then you remember how it was, like we go through a plethora of topics, and of those topics, women would be like the lesser of any of them. To it just being overly saturated with just that.
Just women talk. It was all that Strag talk, all that stuff came in. It went from like comic books. Comic books came in, and I'm not a comic dude, so I would always just kind of tone out after that. I'm into the geopolitics and stuff, and I'm in personal development, the psychological things, the Gnostic stuff. Then the comic books came in, so I kind of slid out then, and then started talking about Strags and all this. I was like, oh my God, I'm out. I can't do another round of this. And I just thought that was not productive. And now that is the conversation. Like, that's it. It's about fighting with each other as the black men and talking about how awful women are. And at some point, you got to get enough of that content where you got to put it in the application or just leave it alone. And I think they just like talking about it.
That's what I was saying. That signifies just how much therapy the black community really does need, because you have guys like this Suspicious Samuels who literally are following the old shock jockey model. Mm-hmm. Say something that is so derogatory, that is so controversial, that is going to trigger people, not just people, but people within your own community specifically.
Yeah.
And so, how they have the cancel culture with Hollywood. Well, and with this black media side, it's like we have a trigger culture. We're just saying things to try to trigger one another. That right there symbolizes you need therapy already, because you're just looking for stuff to trigger people. You're not even saying it because it's true. Even if it were, you know how back in the day, your mom or your grandma would say, just because it's true don't mean you should say it.
Right. Yeah.
Because, and the reason why is because it brings up it opens up these old sores.
Mm.
Like, people have a sore spot about it. You're sitting there trying to trigger people, but in the diagnostic, statistical manual, they'll say that you're the person that is suffering from the actual disease. Because you're projecting,
right, using defense mechanism, and it's the consistent projection that's the thing that gets you to that cognitive level where you're just like, what's happening here? Because they just stay on it they'll do 6-hour live streams on the same damn thing, laughing and saying the same stuff over and over. And I'm like, I can't. I gotta disconnect, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, gotta unplug. Gotta unplug, get your bearings back. Just like I'm watching other YouTubers that talk about happy things. Things that I like to because I'm more on the side of politics and geopolitics, because that's really our next major frontier.
Yeah.
Is political power.
Yeah.
Because without it, you're not going to have any businesses, or what is considered a business is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, you watched how one pandemic, COVID-19, literally wiped out about a third of small businesses.
Yep.
You have half of those businesses not even coming back, even with them having had access to the Paycheck Protection Program.
Yeah. Yep. Getting loans. Still out.
And they still out of there. So what it's going to take to be an entrepreneur over this course of this next decade is going to be completely different. And the bar is going to be so much higher.
Yep. Yeah.
Because it comes with new regulations, because with new tax statuses.
It also involves automation, and we're coming at it with larger deficits, because a lot of folks who are going to be looking to be those entrepreneurs are folks who ain't been paying their rent or their mortgages over the last couple months. So it's going to be a different type of challenge and hole to get out of moving forward. It's going to get scary.
And the hole is going to be deeper.
Yes.
It's going to be a deeper hole.
Yep.
And right now, I mean, New York Times came out with an article saying that there's people that aren't even going to climb out of the debt that they generated from the Paycheck Protection Program.
Man, I ain't gonna talk too much about the work that I do, but for one of my programs, we were cutting $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 checks for rents and utilities, and this was in September. So I can only imagine how much people owe now. It's bad out here, man. It's gonna get better. So even just knowing, and these are for Black folks. We weren't cutting any checks for anybody, but the Black folks lived in our zip codes. So and a lot of them folks who needed help were the folks who are quote unquote these high value men who are making over $50,000 a year. And that's why I'm just like, I don't know what we talking about here. We got to get real and be honest and look at reality, because people are hurting, and the pain hasn't even got to a point where it's full on just yet. Because
I say it's going to get a hell of a lot worse before it gets better. And I think, and for record, I think that's actually a good thing, because the one surefire way to galvanize people is when they're angry.
Yep, you got no options. Press
forward. Got nothing else.
Yep.
It has to be a zero. Has to get down to where it's a zero-sum game, survival or else.
Yep. We'll really see what's high value at that point. Make it.
Okay, you're a high value man. Society collapse. Ain't no more six figures. Ain't even US dollar goes into the toilet. Yeah, let's see how high value you really are. Got a closet full of Easter colored suits.
Looking good on the battlefield. Man.
You know who he is, man. You know what it is. It's like he's that dude. You remember Resident Evil when Mike Epps played in it?
Oh my God.
He had those two pearl handle 45s. Wasn't doing no damage. Couldn't even shoot the things, man. They were just ornaments. You know what I'm saying? Walking around with pearl handle ornaments for guns.
Let's see if I can share this. I don't think I can. Oh man. Yeah, man. It's at some point we got to get real about what's going on, because we can't be out here looking like Mike Epps right here. we can't be out here like this, man. It's not gonna work. It is not gonna work. Oh
yeah,
boy!
You walk into the folk, man. I ain't even bitter, nothing.
Man, all right. I'm about to close out, sir. I appreciate chopping it up with you. It's always good to talk. It's been a while since we've been able to connect. Hopefully, we've been able to have some conversation to help people think. Because at some point, we got to get away from this going back and forth amongst Black males and black females, and really be honest about where we're at and where we need to go. Because it's bad out here, man. It's real bad.
Yeah, well, I thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure as always. I've always thought you were a powerful brother, man. Salute.
Thank you. Much appreciated, man. I'm just doing my part, man. I wouldn't be who I am if I would not make my grandmama proud if I didn't do what I do. So I gotta keep mama and grandmama proud, So all right, man. Well, I'll talk to you later. Again, you're always welcome to chop it up, even if you want to just, come on and have a one-on-one. We can definitely get into it. Typically, when it comes to the geopolitics, I sit back and listen, because that's when I'm in my classroom to learn and understand how all this stuff works. But man, when it comes to us dealing with this mental health, that's when I'll dive into the fire and hopefully help us, get on our healing journey, because we got a lot of work to do, and many of us think that we don't, because we're so engulfed in the dysfunction that we don't even see that it's causing a detriment to our lives. But we have to work on it. But
because it's blinding, right? You know, it's blinding, kind of like a person who's used to smelling their own farts.
Yeah,
person who's used to smelling their own farts, they don't smell it. Ain't nothing happening.
No, ain't nothing there. Yeah, you get it's normalized. Yeah. The dysfunction becomes normal. You don't expect anything different. And then when somebody comes and waves something in your nose to have a different scent, you're looking at them crazy. That's what's ends up happening with us. And again, part of that comfort of us being in dysfunction is having these emotional reactions to white folks. We gotta let that go, man. I ain't here to be hating white people. I ain't got time. And half the time I don't really give a damn what they think at first.
What happens, and I think this kind of got mucked up with the younger generations, is they fail to take the lessons from yesteryear. When I was coming up, the problem wasn't with like your everyday white folk. It was with the government.
Yeah,
it was with the government. It was pushing the government to reparate for what it had done during slavery, Jim Crow. Mass incarceration, the drug war, et cetera, et cetera. Had nothing to do with, hating everyday, white folk who don't even have the ability to change those situations, let alone their own.
Right.
And you look at it, your average white family is getting some kind of assistance or welfare. Right. What the hell are they gonna be able to do to change this shit? They can't even change their own.
Exactly.
And so we've always made it an institutional push.
Right.
And now you have the mainstream telling these young folk institutional racism is a myth.
Exactly.
It's like, well, that's where it started, and that's where it is right now.
Right.
I mean, what else do you call it when you have 80% of the teachers in the United States being white female?
Exactly.
K through 12. What else do you call that?
Right.
What else do you call it whenever you have a city like Ferguson?
Right.
It was 70% black, but 92% white as far as police officers.
Right. And a good chunk of their political like their council people were white folks too, until they changed over, I think, like 2 years after Michael Brown. But in this system, man, we got to get involved. We can't be on the sideline talking about how people are hurting us. You got to get in the game, man, because I don't think this game's going to change anytime soon. We have to be able to play at elite level, because this is getting crazy.
Yeah, we have to keep the conversation. When we talk about racism, the conversation always has to be at the institutional side.
Right.
Not individual prejudices, though individual prejudices are problematic. They are not the priority.
Right.
It's always the institutions that can influence your life.
Right. Right.
That do influence your life.
Every day. And people don't even see it, man. All right, sir.
It's been good, man. Salute to you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna bounce out. Appreciate everybody who stopped by. Thank you, Cerulean. Appreciate Lena for stopping by, LeVar for stopping by. Be sure to check out LeVar. He has the Black Men Healing Conference, virtual conference that happens every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. Here is his email. Feel free to email him, helpingmylittlebrother@gmail.com. Feel free to check that out if you would like to join or support those Black Men Healing Conferences every Wednesday. I don't expect to be doing shows for 2 hours, but I had Cerulean on, so I had to fall back. It's been a minute since I chopped it up with him. Thank you, Cleo Monago, for coming on as well. Thank you, Chaos, for coming on. Did I forget anybody? No, brother Greg West was getting ready to get on an airplane. Said he was he was in the terminal listening. So thank you for checking it out as well. Appreciate y'all. I'll be back next Monday. I'll probably still drop some random videos on my YouTube channel throughout the week. Thank you guys for coming in. If you have questions for me and you want me to talk about particular things, feel free to join Ask the Jegna Facebook group. That's Ask the Jegna. Jegna is Jegna. And you can drop those questions there. All right, everybody. Peace. Have a good week. Happy New Year. and much love. Hotep and build. Peace.